We will be making a start in 2 to 3 minutes time. Please ensure your microphones are muted. Your videos are optional to be turned on. And sit back and relax. Good evening to all the participants in Zoom and those who are watching live stream on YouTube and through our social media platforms. My name is Danish. I am the co-partner of Tindak Malaysia Network Services PLT and also the chairperson for the Persatuan Bertindak Pilihan Raya Bebas dan Saksama, of which you see the logo behind my face. Today is our 14th Petugas and Pemerhati training, and interestingly, it's taking one day before the nomination day for the Sabah elections. For those participants who just joined us, so if you are a Petugas, after your name, write an open bracket and write the word Petugas and then close it with a closing bracket. If you are a Pemerhati, do the similar. And if your name is not complete on the Zoom, please ensure your name at least is recognizable, okay, especially those who still have any terms like iPhone or Android or tablet or anything like that. Just drop that sort of terms and just have your name because attendance will be taken anytime. Now, before I introduce my speaker and the topic today, yeah, just letting you know, this is also part of our ongoing series of specific webinars to help the three Ps, those who are becoming Petugas, Pemerhatis, and PACAs for the Sabah state elections. But this knowledge is applicable across the board beyond these elections for the coming state elections and eventually general elections. So before we proceed, allow me to share my screen. For those who have not joined us before, or those who needs a refresh on memory, these are all the social media platforms that we have, of which the website is maintained on and off basis. Our main social media pages is our Facebook and our X. Later, I will drop these links in the Zoom chat. So I strongly encourage that if any of you have an account for either or all of the social media accounts handles, please proceed to follow us, like us, and share any of our relevant posts. Okay. Like in the previous webinar, time to time we put this call out for us to receive a financial contribution. Just to let you know, today, recently, I just found out our Sokong platform has been working normally. So hence, today we will use the Sokong platform as the avenue for you to contribute whatsoever amount. Okay, for specifically for this 4 webinars, this is the third one starting from October. We are planning to raise 1,000 ringgit to cover all the costs associated with this. Yes, the webinars is free of charge, but your kind contributions will be much appreciated. And this link will be dropped in the platform in the Zoom chat. So feel free to contribute whatsoever amount from that. It helps us to track uh, and inform you later how the money was spent. Let me stop sharing my screen. Okay. I would like to introduce our speaker and the topic that is to come. So our speaker is Derek Koch. He has served as PACA in 2018, served as Pemerhati under Tindak Malaysia's banner uh, for 2 times, and also served as a Petugas in the 2023 state elections. And you have seen his presenting time to time, particularly about the realm of Pemerhatis and also the perspective about how you handle KPDP and PAPM, but now for Sabah it's called PPAM. Okay, they fuse the KPDP and PAPM together. The session today is called the 10 essential tips. Think about this like an exam. I mean, at this point, let's say if you can't remember everything, I strongly recommend to just remember the points that Derek is going to speak. So Derek will speak from now until no more than 9:15. Then thereafter is a Q&A session. Without further ado, I will hand the time to Derek.
Thank you, Danish. Can you hear me? Let's do a check before.
Yes, clear.
Perfect. Let me just bring up my slides. I am having a little bit of a technical issue. Where my laptop is not showing my face, but I will come up after this when I'm done with my slides. Danish, can you see my slides?
Yes, please proceed.
Yeah, great. So just to carry off from what Danish said earlier, I think I see some familiar names here who've attended our previous training sessions, and I know for a fact that Tindak Malaysia, if you sign up as a Tindak Malaysia Petugas, KTM or Pemerhati, one of the 3Ps, and you're trained by us, you will get adequate training provided you come for enough. But what we are going for today is really, we're not going to go into much detail. And I believe because number one, the workshops and webinars that Tindak Malaysia have organized, and also if you are a Petugas yourself or one of the 3Ps, you would have received your slides and material from SPR, the combination of which should be enough to cover you in detail. But like what Danish mentioned, I think today, think of it like, we're sitting for SPM and this is your last minute tuition where we are just going to look at the tips, 10 essential tips. And why do we call it 10 essential tips? Because like tips for your examination and your SPM, these are issues that crop up in almost every single election. And not just every single election from a macro level, but on a micro level, like from each saluran and polling center and school that I go to, we see the same issues cropping up again and again. And this is something where despite the issues keep coming up again and again, we see that 3Ps, the Petugas, Pemerhati, PACA, and also SPR themselves, find still unable to handle these issues, although these issues recur on such a regular basis. So what we're going for today is more of breadth, because I think the depth has been covered enough. And what we'll do is just to do a run through that. Basically, if you can't remember anything, these are the hot topics or the hot issues that you should keep in mind of. And yes, so there's quite a number of us today, not too many. I will want to keep our presentation on this short so we can have more time for Q&A. I think our master KTM trainer is over here as well, our Sifu, who I will call upon to handle some very specific KTM questions after this. And of course, Danish is over here as well. And I think it's good if we can have more discussion that may be more going into the detail as we near towards election season in Sabah. So that's just the context. And basically the first tip or the first essential number one is to introduce yourself. Now, as you go through our Tindak Malaysia training, SPR training, and all the details you have, for example, if you're a KTM, you have your buku kerja, which actually lays out in detail what you need to do, yeah? It may seem that being a 3P, Petugas, Pemerhati, or PACA comes with a lot of details, rules, and regulations, and that's correct. But I think in my experience and seeing how, KTMs and other Petugas have done it in Tindak Malaysia and seeing how other people have done it well and done it not well, I think the essence of being a poll worker, whether in whatever of the 3P role that you play, is actually people skills. Okay, so the essence of it is soft skills and people management because you can know all the rules and regulations. But if your interaction with people who are the stakeholders on the day, yeah, and these stakeholders on the day are varied, yeah, they're very diverse, from SPR officers to the penyelia pusat mengundi, to the volunteers, to penunjuk arah, to your fellow petugas, your pengiring police, and the voters themselves. Yeah, so the list goes on. So what you really see is that being one of the 3Ps involves a lot of people interaction. Even though you are just, let's say, a Pemerhati, which I've done in my previous trainings, and I always say that being a Pemerhati in particular involves a lot of people skills. Of course, being a Tindak Malaysia product, yeah, all of you over here, we are expected to have to know very good knowledge. That's our reputation outside, even amongst SPR and the other organizations as well. But what we can and should really focus on is the people skills. And one of the easiest way to do so, and this is the reason why I put this as number one, is to introduce yourself to your different stakeholders. So if you're a KTM, that involves, getting to know your fellow petugas, your fellow keranis, okay, your team on the day, getting to know the SPR officer that's in charge of the polling center or polling district, the penyelia pusat mengundi, okay, and your very important relationship is a police pengiring, yeah, on that day who you will liaise with quite a bit. And that extends through all the 3P. So if you're Pemerhati, like I mentioned earlier, that involves one of the first things you should do in whatever role you have as a 3P is to introduce yourself to your most direct, whether supervisor or colleague. And then you have to identify all your different stakeholders that you'll be in interaction with. Because that simple act of introducing yourself builds rapport. It builds a relationship. And whichever one of your 3Ps, let's say you're Pemerhati, by making yourself known to the KTM, which is also something you have to do, yeah, as part of your responsibility. You have to introduce yourself as a Pemerhati to a KTM when you enter their saluran. It's not only polite, but it's highly strategic. It's highly strategic because it enables you to win their trust, to position yourself as an ally, and to be able to influence elections on the day in one of your 3P roles. And of course, if you're a KTM, okay, where a lot of your role will be involving people, okay, working in partnership with people, we really have to ensure that people skills are very important. You can be there and know all the rules and regulations, but no one is listening to you, also tak boleh. So that's what I really want to emphasize, and it's something that I constantly emphasize in all my training. People skills, soft skills, position yourself as an ally, as a person to help elections, and then you will find that you will make a bigger impact. Yeah. Next. Okay. Now, like I mentioned earlier, what we're going through today is all the common hot topics, okay? And these are things which some of you already no issue. You know for a fact from our training that, for instance, like what you're looking at here, mobile phones is no longer an issue. Why? Strictly forbidden. But you will still see in certain salurans, certain KTMs, and in certain places, whether you're a PACA, Pemerhati, or a KTM yourself, you will find that people are still squabbling and being blur about this. And what do the rules simply say? As a voter, no phones in the polling booth, okay? If you're a poll worker, if you're a KTM or you've been instructed by your KTM as a KP to key in using the app or to use your phone, then sure. But otherwise, the phones are strictly for electoral use only. Now, I do want to highlight something that I identified. Yeah, if you look at the one down there, the photo down there, where it says KP3 serahkan kertas undi dan maklumkan pengundi untuk meninggalkan telefon bimbit di meja KTM. Now, this has been listed in the slides that were given to you in the PRN Sabah kit, yeah, that Danish kindly shared with me because I wanted to see what they have been teaching you all. And to me, this is where I feel the discretion of the KTM comes in. I personally, from my experience as well, I prefer if the voter, the moment they come in, the KTM instructs them to leave their phone at the start. Okay, and if you're a KTM over here or a Pemerhati and you have a discretion to make an influence or to bisik your KTM to do this, I think that is a much preferable option compared to the one on this slide down here where it says it is the duty of the KP3 to maklumkan pengundi to leave their phone. Because to me, this really disrupts the process. People will be carrying their phone all the way until KP3. They may forget their phones when they go out. The easiest and most elegant solution is from the start, leave your phone, go in, go through the whole process, undi, and when you leave, it's easy for them to remember that their phones are at the exit and entrance as well. And even then, you still see people forgetting their phones. But I think that's the most elegant way. So next, essential 3, the next hot issue is, we always see this, agent, party, PACA, recording voter numbers like the cheat you see over here. Now, this happens in every single election, almost every saluran, every school, and despite, I think, Tindak Malaysia and also all the other NGOs constantly raise this issue. Whether you're a KTM, you're a Pemerhati or PACA, you've probably experienced this, and then it depends on the individual KTM to decide, because SPR will say ini adalah discretion budi baik KTM to decide whether they to allow this or not. So the good thing of this current election, the slide pack that SPR prepared, as you can see over here, explicitly says that catatan ini dilarang dibawa keluar sepanjang proses pengundian. So that puts an end, hopefully, to this practice where we constantly see PACAs doing this throughout the whole process, and then it becomes an issue both between KTMs who are trained from Tindak, who put a stop to this, or let's say you are KP or you're Pemerhati, and your KTM in your saluran says it's okay. And then that creates a lot of issues, and I'm glad that SPR has come up with a clear directive over here to say that this is not allowed to be brought out until the end of the election. So that hopefully solves the issue. But again, this is something that you will see in your saluran. Highlight it as well and just remember this, yeah? Next thing that happens really often is basically the question of what ID can I bring? Every time I go for an SPR briefing, or even on election day, even whether they're young or old, the same question comes up, what ID can I bring? So you can see over here what's being accepted. Number 1, simple, your my card. Number 2, your passport. Number 3, physical driving license. Number 4, document pengenalan sementara. Okay, and 2 kinds of document pengenalan sementara. But the key question then now comes up, because why? JPJ now has a e-license. That's very rare that you get a physical driving license. So that brings up the question, can I use my lesen memandu digital, right? Which means it's stored on your phone. Now, of course, here I will go back to the default answer, which is according to the discretion of the KTM. But bear in mind just now that we mentioned that you should not be able to use your phones in the saluran. You're supposed to leave it at the start, which is what I recommend. And I think maybe that's why SPR said that it is the KP3 who should remind the voter to leave their phones. But what I think is very clear from here is that the simple answer is, if they use the JPJ app on the official app and they have the license and they show, then you should accept, because I think it's an official document. And of course, the usage of phone is then up to the KTM's discretion. But I think this is something like I've discussed with Danish as well. I think it is well within the right of the KTM to even ask for an alternative ID or to even tegur very nicely and say, lain kali, or like election lain, sila bawa a physical my card atau passport or something like that, yeah? Because other we just want to avoid the issue of usage of phones. And I think this is the only situation where that may arise. The next thing happens again, we've been using the indelible ink, but people constantly come up to the KTM or the KP in charge and say, saya tak nak letak indelible ink on my index finger of the left hand, which is the default and standard. So what we are seeing over here is very clear. This is the order, okay? This is the priority order of where what finger and which hand should be used when we come to apply the indelible ink on the voter's finger. Yeah. So standard finger, and unless necessary, we say no. Unless there's a big mitigating circumstance, some people will say saya suka guna tangan kiri, saya nak memasak, saya nak kahwin, jadi saya ada inai di atas tangan saya, jadi tak boleh. This is what you should abide by. And if in the event, of course, ada isu tiada jari contohnya, gunalah tandakan dakwat, use the ink and mark it. Again, the priority is on the end of the left or the right using a brush. So same issue over here. Hopefully we don't see this anymore, but it keeps cropping up in every single school polling center that I visit as part of my Pemerhati duties. There's always at least one case where they say, saya nak guna jari atau tangan lain. Okay. Essential issue number 6, we see this all the time. This is the case of orang yang dipercayai. That is the official term that is used over here, where let's say a disabled or blind voter may bring one trusted person, and there are two conditions of this orang yang dipercayai, or in English, one trusted person. The person has to be Malaysian, number 1, and number 2 has to be age 18 or above, and this person can mark the ballot paper for them. And of course, you have to complete borang 10. And also the key thing over here is that the KTM themselves can also assist the voter to mark the ballot. And of course, this is the use of that discretion. And it goes back to what I think I mentioned in my previous trainings, where what we aim here as one of the 3 Ps, whether you're a KTM, Pemerhati, or KP, is to aid in the exercise of democratic right of voting. So this allows for that. Of course, the KTM, there are instances where this may be abused, and of course, we want to use the discretion of the KTM over here to make that judgment call. If the KTM, let's say, I'm speaking to the ones over here who are trained by us, if you feel that the orang yang dipercayai tidak boleh dipercayai oleh kamu, that's where your discretion can come in, where you say, okay, you know what, the KTM can exercise your powers to assist that blind voter instead. But ultimately, no one should be barred from voting lah. The next issue is pengundi tumpang. Now, this happens a lot. Simple situation where, let's say I am a young person, I'm 33, I'm supposed to vote in Saluran 5. Saluran 5, unfortunately, is usually in a school which is higher up because it's for a younger voter. But unfortunately, I had an accident, which means that I tak boleh panjat up the stairs and I need to vote in a lower placed saluran, which is usually reserved for a disabled or an elderly voter, and that's usually saluran 1 or saluran 2, which is downstairs. Now, there are regulations that allow for a pengundi tumpang like me, where basically I tumpang, I vote in a different channel that is not mine, sorry. Now, I have seen for myself, especially how this happens, and I won't go into there are 10 steps over here. I won't go into this in detail because I believe that it's over here. I'm going to share my slides as well, and it's also in your SPR kit. And I believe that our Tindak training has covered this. But I just want to highlight this because I see this happen so much, and it creates a problem, because why it affects 2 salurans. Now, the key thing that happens here is that tumpang maksudnya, right? I vote somewhere else, but where does my ballot paper come from? Okay, that's number 1. And number 2, where does my ballot paper go to? And unfortunately, I've seen where the ballot paper that the pengundi tumpang votes on is placed in the saluran bawah. But it actually has to be brought stands. Because if not, what you will experience is the common nightmare which everyone is afraid of when you count votes, which is other extra ballot paper. And that will create a big headache. And this is actually something that I witnessed in my last Pemerhati stint, where the KTM of tingkat bawah took the kertas undi and put it in his box. No one said a word. KTM upstairs didn't say a word. Pemerhati downstairs, I was not, there was a lot of drama over there, but I had to inform the SPR officer that this happened, and the SPR officer had to go and make sure that they do not repeat this for the whole day, because this was the first voter. So basically what happened in the school, this was in Mahkota, the seat of Mahkota. The first voter was already a penghuni tumpang, and then the KTM upstairs, downstairs made a mistake as to how they handled it. And then after that, it was a bit of a headache. But this is something that comes up a lot. Yeah, I feel that for the other issues like this, orang yang dipercayai, you have an issue of, let's say, a trans voter, whose gender doesn't match the IC, is less of an issue. But this issue, essential number 7, where the issue of penghuni tumpang happens quite a lot, and we want to avoid it, whether you're a KTM, KP, or Pemerhati. Next issue that comes up, and this comes up a lot in the media, has come up a number of years, and I think this may be an issue in Sabah as well and Sarawak, where there are seats that are very small and very remote, which means that the gazetted time of polling station may close earlier than the standard usual 5:30 p.m. Okay, and that is according to the Gazette. So you will see many news issues of people complaining, oh, saya datang pukul 3:30, or saya datang pukul 4, pukul 5, but the polling center is already closed. But the Gazette clearly states that because of the number of voters in this area, the polling closes at 2. Okay, so that goes by to the Gazette. Apa yang diwartakan by SPR, otherwise it's 5:30 p.m., which means that if you are a voter, if you have voters, okay, and they are already lining up, okay, and within the polling center compound, okay, even after 5:30 p.m. has passed, they must be allowed to vote. Okay, that is a democratic right. And here, of course, if you're a KTM, you may or may not be involved in this, but actually, you will, because there will be people who are still queuing. You have to ensure that they are allowed to vote. And as a Pemerhati as well, this is something you want to keep an eye out for each, not just saluran, but the entire polling center as well, to see if anyone is being denied their right to vote if they are already there by 5:30 p.m. and queuing up. Of course, if it's after 5:30 p.m., the gate will be closed and no one will be allowed in. But again, this is a common issue that happens. It's a very hot media topic. So you need to be aware of what the rules and regulations say. Number 9, moving to number 9, now is the issue. So tadi we were looking at essential 8 was closing the polling station. Now essential 9, essential tip number 9 is vote counting. Now this again comes up in every SPR training, Tindak training, in the media, social media, where you have to decide on undi ragu. Okay, now there are 2 points here I want to make. Number 1, which is the KTM is the sole final arbiter of what is accepted and what is rejected. Of course, he can show his decision and get agreement of all the EMUs. But ultimately, the KTM is the one who decides. Yeah. But the core driving and guiding principle to decide whether a vote is accepted as part of the tally or rejected as undi ragu or undi rosak is very clear. Is the voter's intention clear? Do we know if, regardless of how the voter, whether they use, some of them, they will use the indelible ink and stamp it on a candidate, or they will, instead of drawing an X, they will use a tick, or they will draw a logo, their face, or create some scratchings. But if, despite all that, the question, the golden rule here is, does that mark, whatever form it takes, reflect Okay, clearly the intention of the voter. And if the intention of the voter is clear, even if the mark is not perfect, but it's very clear who they are choosing, then it has to be accepted. Okay? So that is the golden rule. And again, the role of us as poll workers, as volunteers, is to ensure that a democratic right gets exercised. And we want to make sure of that. And of course, there's specifics here, like the KTM must sign and stamp accepted or rejected on the back of every undi ragu. Yeah, but the key golden rule here is regardless of whatever social media says, regardless of whether it's a scrolling or a scribble, is the voter's intention clear? And if it is clear, you need to accept it. So here is what we see. This is part of the SPR guidelines. And you will see at the bottom over here, I want to highlight is that walau apapun alasan penolakan di atas, KTM perlu menerima perkara A dengan syarat KTM berpuas hati bahawa peninggalan cap kertas undi tersebut disebabkan oleh kecuaian petugas, which means that A is the issue where the cap kertas undi saluran tidak dicop. Okay, there is no stamp. However, there is a clear vote. Okay, so this according to the regulations means that KTM has to accept it. Okay, perkara D tidak bertanda atau ditanda selain di tempat atau mengikut cara yang diperuntukkan. Like I mentioned earlier, it could be a scribble, it could be instead of using the X, they use their thumbprint. But if the KTM is satisfied that it shows a clear intention towards who they want to vote, it needs to be accepted. Now we move to number 10, essential tip number 10. This is another hot topic that comes up every single election. It happens in almost every saluran, unfortunately. And then it comes out on social media. Despite the fact that you see this notice on the right, okay, this sticker on the right or this piece of paper is pasted on every single on the table of the PACA, okay? And it's placed on the table of the KTM as well. It's very clear as to how orang 13, which is the statement of ballot papers, okay, and orang 14, the statement of the count, which is the undi, should be treated. And it's very clear over here because every year you have a confusion where borang 13, okay, they say ETM and EMU said borang 13 tidak diberikan kepada us. But it's not borang 13 that should be given, it is borang 14, okay? And borang 14 has to be given in copies, yeah? A signed copy to all the ETMs or EMUs, okay? And the EMUs then will then verify the Form 14 copies together. Yeah, so this is very, very clear. We have many cases, almost every election or saluran, or not saluran, but polling center that I go to, where we see right at the end there's a bit of chaos because the PACAs will then say KTM tidak beri kita borang 14. Okay, and we see this time and time again, even the most recent elections. So SPR has been trying to do this. But you can see the photo that I put, they very clearly right there, borang ini hendaklah diserahkan kepada pegawai pengurus dan satu salinan diserahkan kepada setiap ejen mengira yang hadir. It's very clear that's on every borang 14-nya, the notice is there. Okay? And on every table, you have that peringatan poster. But even then, we still see KTMs refuse to give borang 14 or refuse to sign it for whatever reason. And I think this is mainly, again, because of the poor training. I don't think any of our Tindak trained KTMs have ever encountered this or have ever done this, but we see this a lot, especially in those KTMs who are not trained, and they're very scared because they're usually civil servants, yeah? So civil servants are very scared of signing anything because they're scared they'll get into trouble. Although the reality here is that if you're a KTM, you will be held liable in an election petition if anything goes wrong, okay? But despite that, this makes it very clear. I hope there's no more confusion, yeah, especially for Sabah when it comes to Form 13 or particularly Form 14 or what we call Borang 14. Okay. Bonus, last tip is when you go to the counting center. Now this applies to KTM, okay, but also if you're Pemerhati, where you are now looking at the process of pengemasan sample, where the KTM is then now tying up doing the pemeteraian peti, and putting things into a sample, I myself have seen this where sample number 1 and 2, which contains boron 13, okay, sampul number 1 boron 13 and sampul number 2 boron 14, which is I would say, like I mentioned earlier, boron 14 is basically probably the most important form you have in an SPI election, because the tallying of boron 14 is what gives you the result. Now we see that sampul number 1 and 2 very clear here, jangan masukkan dalam peti undi, tapi dibawa by hand by the KTM and diserahkan kepada pegawai pengurus. I have actually seen KTM take Salompo 1 and 2 and put it in the peti undi and lock up peti undi, dimeterai. So then that creates a lot of problems and a lot of headaches, and it's an unnecessary delay. Yeah. So please, sampul 1, sampul 2 tidak perlu masukkan dalam peti undi. Okay. And now it's 9:10. I have reached the end of my presentation today, and I hope that this, you guys, I really have faith in all of you being trained by Tindak, that you are all adequately trained and prepared for the upcoming election. But I hope that this, if you really, really cannot remember anything, you just remember all these common issues, and this will hopefully guide you on the day itself. Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm happy to open the discussion up to take questions. And yes, I will definitely enlist our master KTM trainer. Suresh is here. I think he's a troublemaker, if I'm not mistaken. I served with Suresh as my KTM for one of the elections, and of course Danish is here as well to have a discussion and answer any queries that you guys may have together. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much, Derek. So now it's the time for Q&A. Untuk makluman anda, jika anda mempunyai soalan dalam bahasa Malaysia, anda boleh menanya soalan dalam bahasa Malaysia. So I'd like to open the time for a Q&A to anyone who has any questions. Especially those who are planning to serve in Sabah, do you have any questions or anything that you would like to clear? Maybe I'll just kickstart some questions and then I allow others who have questions to chip. Oh, wait, there's one question. Suresh. Suresh, please unmute yourself.
Okay, so you want to ask the question first. Hi guys. Hi Danish. Hi Derek. Good presentation. Thank you. I'm actually going to go to the topic of the identification. SPR kata identification yang sah. So Derek have showed the identification yang sah, which is kad pengenalan, passport, and so on and everything. But my concern right now, what about those JPJ app? I mean, yes, you brought up the topic that telefon tidak dibenarkan bawa masuk. Tapi kalau katakanlah pengundi tu datang, tak bawa wallet, tapi dia ada tu je, dia ada telefon to show the identification. I think this question was asked to me a couple of times, but this is to ask your point of view. I'm not asking you to clarify betul ke tak betul, because I'm also in the same position, so don't worry about that. So in your point of view, so from what you have observed from the current KTM training, have they mentioned as APR or Academy Pilihan Raya mentioned that identification using via JPJ app allowed? So currently that's my question for now. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't attend their latest APR or SPR training, so maybe if anybody here who is a Petugas can chip in and chime in and see whether did SPR or APR address this issue, because I think for me, I think like Suresh mentioned as well, I think for me it's about exercising a democratic right to vote. And if a voter comes and they have no wallet, no IC, no passport, nothing else, and they only have the JPJ official app, then as KTM, I think the right position is to allow that person to vote. Because again, I think that is the overriding what they call priority, which is our role here is to ensure that people who have the right to vote should not be denied the right to vote. Yeah. So that's my, of course, our stance over here, my stance personally as well, but I'm not sure if SPR or APR addressed that. Anish, did you have on that?
I think from what I understand is the ball has been thrown to the court of KTM to decide, right? So JPJ, so long the app is valid, I think that should be okay, right? But if you take a screenshot of it and then try to show, then that can be a problem, right? Because at the end of the day, the KTM and the KP must be confident that you are who you are on the document. So yes, it falls back to the Budi Bicara, the KTM, but I would say use the Budi Bicara wisely. Right? So, because at the end of the day, you don't want to get into trouble. If you think it is helpful, also maybe write in your buku peristiwa as a KTM that this so and so pengundi decided to use the JPJ digital application and show you, right? It's just to protect you, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, and just to elaborate what Danish said, your buku peristiwa, your buku kerja, if you are a KTM, yeah, I'm not, how many are KTMs here today? It's actually a very, very powerful and very useful tool for you because, and again, of course, if you're a KTM, what is your subject of? You always have the danger of being liable for any election petition in the future. So that buku peristiwa protects you because you're saying, okay, this happened, at what time, what steps were taken, and I consulted agent tempat ETM dan PACA yang ada, and everyone agreed that this is something that we should accept, and that is written down. So that is something very powerful that you can use. That I'm glad Danish brought up. If you're a KTM, please, your buku kerja, buku peristiwa, they're there for a reason. Please utilize it.
How about the others? Kindly unmute your microphone, and if you want to turn on your video, please proceed. Okay, maybe while some of us takes time to think about the questions, this is a question I want to ask to Derek. At what time do you recommend that the PACA should be, PA, the polling agent, should be in the Saluran in the morning? I mean, we are using, let's say we use a Peninsular Malaysia time, which starts at 8 o'clock, but Sabah Sarawak, if I'm not mistaken, you start at 7:30 in the morning.
My personal opinion, if you're a PACA, is that you want to get there as early as possible. Of course, you won't be allowed in. Most KTMs will have to, and the Pengiring police will be handling the saluran and setting it up. But it is good for you to be there for a few reasons. Number one, for the very simple reason of my essential tip number one, which is to introduce yourself. You want to introduce yourself to the KTM and say, oh, I'm here. And of course, the KTM will then inspect your surat latihan, your documents, and ask you what party you're from. Along with the many other duties that the KTM will have on the day. Yeah. So you will be allowed in when everything is ready. I would say usually as a former PACA myself, if it's 8 a.m., then you should be there 7:30. Yeah, half an hour before. Just be on standby because also you will have your pengurus over there who will have to coordinate your different what do you call that? Slot times, yeah, because you will be working in a what's the word? My brain is not working right now. Different
Shifts.
Yes,
Shifts.
shift system. Thanks for that, Danish. So you'll be different. So you want to be able to coordinate that, and I think that's important that the PACA is there. And you again, here's the other thing, right? You don't want to disrupt the process when the election has begun, because I've seen as a Pemerhati and also as a Petugas, you're sitting in there. You have one set of PACA who's already there at your special table and your seat. And then while the election has started, the polling process has started, suddenly this PACA comes in and then goes to the KTM and says, hi, saya adalah, agent, saya adalah PACA, here's my document and everything. And that really disrupts the process because then the KTM will have to record it in his buku peristiwa. He has to check your documents. And at the same time, the voters are there to vote. So the process has to go through. So you're actually disrupting the electoral process. So I think come earlier as soon as as much as you can. Of course, you don't need to be there 1 hour earlier, but I think half an hour is always and this is again is practical advice. Yeah, it's not official. Half an hour to 15 to 30 minutes before is always a good way to rule of thumb, I would say.
Okay. So let's say if there is no PACA, I take it as the checking of the ballot box as confirmed as empty will be done in front of the police. And this is to be done 15 minutes before the start of the poll. Am I correct to say?
That's correct. Yeah, and the polling can proceed even if there is no PACA from any party, not a single one. Yeah, as long as KTM is there and pengiring, police pengiring, that is okay to proceed. You don't The presence of a PACA is not compulsory to the running of an election. Yeah.
Okay. I would like to open the time to others. Please use this opportunity to ask questions. So is everyone clear about what is expected?
And if anyone feels they want to chime in on so I've covered about 10 what I would say is common issues that covers the 3P punya duties for the day. But if any of you feel there's any other issue that I missed out, you can bring it up right now and we can discuss it as well. I think we have some time to do that. Yeah. That you feel every election, every polling center, every saluran faces the issue, then we can maybe highlight it just in case I missed out on any.
I have a question because some of us are from Pemerhati. As a Pemerhati, what are the documents or the things that you need to show? Because of course you can't just simply enter the saluran. Provide the KTM must be okay with the timing. What are the things you must?
You need to have definitely your surat lantikan. You need to have your surat. Is it a surat aku janji? I can't remember the name right now where you take an oath. So there's two documents. I think it's just two letters. Along with your pass, you need to have your pass. And the thing about Pemerhati is that it's not that all those documents are important, but the other thing that's not a document is actually your Pemerhati uniform. Okay, you need to come in a Pemerhati uniform. You will be assigned your your uh your what do you call that? Your uniform. Yeah, yeah. So you need to have your borang A lah, basically. But yeah, your uniform, you have to come in your full uniform that's been provided to you. And like I've mentioned, actually, the wearing of the uniform with all the SPR logos, yeah, I've done this in my Pemerhati trainings before. Actually, right, a lot of people don't actually understand the Pemerhati program. They think you are an internal SPR staff when they see you wearing all the SPR logos all over. And because of that, right, they actually see you straight away from the start as orang dalam, orang sendiri, or as an ally, because you're not seen as someone outside, although you're actually representing an external organization. So somehow this becomes a very powerful unintended consequence that you are seen as an SPR officer. Yeah, although you're appointed by SPR, which is correct, but you're seen as an SPR officer internally, which means that the candidate or even the penyelia pusat mengundi will really come to you and will tell you a lot of things that they would normally not tell a pacha, for instance. Because a pacha is seen as you are agent party, you represent a party. I won't tell you this because I will look bad. So in my experience, the uniform as a Pemerhati SPR actually buys you a lot of entry, a lot of not just entrance because you're allowed entrance to all points as a Pemerhati, but allows you a lot of access, yeah, into the people who run the elections themselves. And they will really open up and tell you a lot of issues. Like I just went there again, number one, essentially number one, introduce yourself, say I'm a Pemerhati, and then you straight away ask them, are there any issues that you face over here? And you will find that the Pengelia Pusat Mengundi or the KTMs or even the volunteers, penunjuk arah, are very candid, or including the police, yeah, because again, even the police sometimes don't understand the Pemerhati program and they reveal a lot of information that they normally won't if they see you as a pacha or an agent party. Yeah. So it's not just the fact that you need to carry all these documents, your borang A, like surat lantikan and your uniform, but it also gives you a very strategic access.
Okay, I have a question. This statement from one of our Petugas candidates. There is a dot or a small mark for candidate A and a large clear X for candidate B. So the debate, party A, the large clear X shows the voter's true intent. The small dot was likely an unintentional mistake or a pen smudge. Party B says the presence of any mark in more than one box renders the ballot paper spoiled and void. There is no room to guess which one was accidental.
Yeah, common issue. Like I said earlier, there are two golden rules. Number one, number one is, does this reflect, okay, and convey the intention of the voter? Okay, that's number one. And number two, ultimately, the discretion to decide is the KTM. Yeah. So if I am the KTM over here, of course, I think we can ask the Tindak people over here like Danish and maybe Suresh whether you will accept which one. But if I was a KTM, and of course, depending on the size of the mark, I would say that the large clear X is accepted as a vote. Yeah, that is my position. And of course, because again, it depends on the context, and I will show and explain the decision to the agent into the EMU. But to me, that is the golden rule. And as a KTM, I will explain that. I think it's good practice to also explain that to the stakeholders, to the EMUs in there, and say, number one, the rule of SPR clearly states, does this reflect the intention of the voter? And number two, it's still my discretion as a KTM. But of course, that can be more consultative. I think the best KTMs who do that are more consultative in that sense. Yeah.
Suresh, please unmute your microphone.
Actually, what I wanted to inform, Derek has informed much better than me. Yes, I agree with Derek's statement. Thank you. So basically, the small dot up to the KTM could be smudges or accidental, or from the indelible ink drip on it and everything. So it's up to a good KTM to justify. Thank you, Derek. Actually, your answer was better than mine.
Okay, so any other questions or comments? I mean, it doesn't have to be just only questions. Ada apa-apa soalan? Oh, wait, there's one more. Okay, no. I'll give everyone 5 more minutes before we wrap up around 9:30. Yes, Suresh. Please unmute your microphone.
Sorry. Coming back to my earlier question. Yes, I'm in line what Tanish and Derek has mentioned about voters' right. We can't stop them from voting and everything. And ask me personally, yes, the identification from the JPJ, in a way, I will allow it if I'm the KTM at that time when the voter comes and show to me and everything. But my concern right now, I mean, to be safe for the coming PRN Sabah, I think to be safe, all the Petugas or either your KTM or your KPs, better clarify this before the election with your ROs. Sebab dalam peraturan, dalam slide, SPR never explain. And I believe some of you did ask SPR or some in your KTM group, and none of you got a clear answer from the RO or whatever and everything. So I think better ask this question again in the RO group. Ask them to be firm. Boleh terima ke atau tidak boleh terima? This is just to protect yourself, just in case. Then number two, I think we need to educate others who are the voters who are coming in. Just bring your IC lah. I mean, we won't know that KTM will accept or not. We won't know. So to be safe, just bring your IC. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so thanks, Suresh. So let's 4 more minutes. Any other questions or comments? Faris, sila buka microphone anda.
Okay. Hi everyone. I just wanted to follow up with what Derek mentioned, that with your ID and your uniform, you tend to be a magnet for people who want to provide you all sorts of information and feedback. So I just want to know, as a Pemerhati, because I think I'm designated as a possible Pemerhati. So what do I do with all that wealth of information? Am I supposed to record? Am I supposed to feedback after the polling station? Is there any point in time we're supposed to act on it as a Pemerhati, yeah? Or am I supposed to report it to someone? Because if people start to feedback that to me, then obviously, am I supposed to be passive, or is there something that I'm supposed to do with all that information?
Great question, Faris. we probably need to rerun my Pemerhati workshop again for that, Danish, because it touches on the role and function of Pemerhati. I think the Pemerhati role, I think the pros and cons, the pros of Pemerhati role is that it's actually not very clearly defined beyond observation. So there's actually no reporting powers per se, yeah. And again, that also involves the entire role of SPR, as a role of a watchdog to the role of a KTM. So it exposes a lot of heavy structural issues. But to just look at your role as an individual Pemerhati, there are more than three avenues. Number one, there is the official SPR feedback mechanism, okay, where you actually are given a link to input your report. Now, SPR sends these links periodically throughout the day, and you key in. That's part of your duty. Your main duty, if you don't do anything, is you have to write that report. Okay, so to answer the question, is there a report to be written? Yes, there is. You're given either a Google form or their own mechanism, whatever platform, you're actually given that in the WhatsApp group, okay, to key in your input. The second mechanism is, of course, if you're a Tindak Pemerhati, we also prepare our own report. So that's where Danish or whoever the Pemerhati coordinator is will be also providing that kind of avenue for you to submit your report. Number three is that WhatsApp group that you're put into itself is a very powerful platform and avenue for you to raise specific issues that's been happening, specific complaints that you've been receiving, to highlight it to the SPR officer themselves, in your WhatsApp group. And also, again, like the essential thing, one, introduce yourself. Introduce yourself to the SPR officer who's been assigned in that school. Introduce yourself to, you see someone who looks important, who's wearing an SPR uniform, where you can actually directly go to an SPR officer and say, hey, this is not being done correctly. Okay, for instance, the issue of pengundi tumpang, let's say, like suddenly you have 2 or 3 KTMs who, instead of bringing the ballot back regional saluran mengundi, puts it in the saluran bawah, you can't go and make a scene or make a fuss, but you can either, if you are the Pemerhati in that saluran and you see this happening, you can whisper. Of course, this is where your discretion and your soft skills come in. Whisper to a KTM and say, hey, actually Encik Tuan, ini sebenarnya salah. Then you just use their buku kerja. Buku kerja KTM is useful for you as well as a Pemerhati, because you can point to the page and say, Tuan KTM, sebenarnya tengok buku kerja ni. Ini adalah proses yang patutnya ada. And the buku kerja is very detailed. So if you're a Pemerhati, you can use the buku kerja KTM to help you to point out certain issues that are there. Because again, KTM, especially new ones, especially ones that are inexperienced or nervous or not trained by us, a lot of things you have to handle. So just use the buku kerja as as the way to help. Or if you feel that I was actually in a room where I mentioned my KTM actually made the mistake of putting the undi into his saluran bawah, I chose not to confront the KTM because in the half an hour before that, the KTM was very hostile to me. So I felt that if I intervene, it will create a big hoo-ha. So instead of that, I went to speak to an SPR officer who was standing next to me, and I said, Tuan, sebenarnya Tuan nampak kan apa yang berlaku tu, itu sebenarnya salah. And after that, the pegawai actually went to speak to the KTM to rectify, to try and prevent it from happening again. So again, a lot of this as a Pemerhati, there's a lot of scope for you. The good and bad is that there's a lot of scope for you to exercise and exert your influence. But of course, there are unofficial channels. Like I said, you can influence the election process directly or indirectly. But officially, your job as Pemerhati is to write that report, to both SPR and also Tindak as well. I hope that answers this question, Faris.
Yeah, it does. I understood the report part. I'm just not clear on the immediate intervening part during the polling. That's the thing.
Yeah. And of course, if you see an offense being committed, you can mention it to the police. You can mention it to the SPR officer. And of course, again, unfortunately, there's MECC, but SPR themselves, again, if you go for training, they themselves don't have a lot of power to act on a lot of things. So there needs to be a police report. There needs to be a report with SPRM or MECC. So use those official channels of reporting. So see yourself as a reporter, lah, yeah. But your role as a Pemerhati is not just confined to that, because like I mentioned earlier, your informal powers on the day itself are actually can be quite far-reaching if you use it correctly and wisely.
Okay, thanks.
One last round of questions before we wrap up for tonight. Okay, if there is none, let me just share my screen with everyone with you as we are going to wrap up right now. So do follow us on our social media pages. It has been dropped in the chat earlier, and also follow visit our website time to time. Okay, our active social media platforms is our Facebook and our X. Other pages are updated only on a needs basis, so please do follow us and like, share, and repost. And finally, I kindly appeal your generosity to consider contributing to our cause. You can scan the QR code, or alternatively, you can use this particular link that has been shared again in the Zoom chat to consider contributing via that platform. Unfortunately, in the previous webinar, the SOCOM platform wasn't working, but today it is working. So with that, I shall stop sharing my screen. And we have come to the end of the session today. So thank you very much, everyone. I'll stop the recording.